Hey, so I have been working on gifts today. These fun signs that I made and framed, and then they have a cute little ribbon on them. This one says choose joy. You can hardly see that there. Anyways, I want to show you my process for going through and making a sign like this from start to finish. Okay, so I start out with a plain board just like this. It's painted with an outdoor white, just regular paint. I don't worry about painting the sides or the back. I just paint the front with a smooth roller brush, a small one. And then on my cutting machine, I have a silhouette. I go ahead and I cut a design. Now you probably can't see that, but I do design this in Affinity Designer. And then I send it to my cutting machine and trace it and cut it right on the silhouette. So now I'm going to go ahead and remove the words from this cut file. And what I'm doing is making a stencil. Okay, now that I have my stencil created, I'll go ahead and put some transfer paper on that so that I can easily transfer it to my board to use as a stencil. So here I have some transfer paper. And what I did was try to line the red line up with the bottom of the word choose, so that it'll be easier to line up. Now this is a burnishing tool, and I'll go ahead and, they call this burnishing, I believe, burnish the transfer paper onto my stencil. And I do this so that it'll stick to the transfer paper when I pull it off the backing of the vinyl. Okay, now my goal is to take the backing off of this and that everything will stick to that transfer paper, so then I can put it onto my sign board. And I can use my tool as a guide if I need to. So far, so good. All right, and that came off very nicely. So now I can place it on my board, and I want to try to center it and put it towards the bottom. And sometimes I'll just use my tool to kind of measure to make sure that we're on target, because it looks pretty bad if it's all crooked. And that looks like it's going to be a little crooked. Like this side needs to go down. Okay, I think that that's looking pretty good, so I'm going to go ahead and burnish it again right onto the board. And now what this will do is allow me to lift this transfer paper up, and the stencil should stick to the board. And I find if I kind of go at an angle and pull it straight back, it works pretty well. Beautiful. Okay, now I am just going to go ahead and burnish that down a little bit more, make sure that I don't have any bubbles in there or anything. And my next step is to paint over my stencil with the same color as my background, which in this case is white. And what this does is if any paint were to bleed underneath the stencil, it would be the same color as the background, so it wouldn't matter, right? So I'll go ahead and do that. You can see my roller brush here. I'm just using one of these small rollers, and I like to get a little paint on it and then use an old towel to kind of get excess off so I'm not putting big globs on my stencil. Okay, so that isn't a real thick layer, but that's just all we need. And now I'm going to go ahead and let that dry, but not for too long, and then I'll come back and I'll paint the black. Okay, so now that our white paint is dry, we're going to go ahead and add our black paint. And this is basically just a color sample that I picked up at Home Depot, and it's just black. And I'll go ahead and open that up and paint my letters. And I don't want to do a super thick coat. I want to keep it kind of thin and in even strokes. And then I'll do a second coat later. Okay, it's time to put the second coat of paint on. This will be the final coat too. Okay, so now the trick will be to come back and take off the stencil before it's totally dry. If I were to leave it all night, it would probably pull up some of the black paint with the stencil. So I want it to be just slightly damp when I pull it off. So I'll see you in a few minutes. Okay, so now we get to see how good we did with our stencil. I'm gonna go ahead and pull up my vinyl. Fingers crossed it turned out well. Oh dear, I'm seeing some bleeds there. Okay, so I do have a tiny bit of touch up to do. No worries, right? I can take my black paintbrush and touch this up real quick. So I keep all of my paint in baggies while I'm working on the project. Okay, and now that we have that done, we can go ahead and apply or put on our frame. And let me show you. These are 1x2s, and I have simply cut them to size and then stained them. And let's see, the stain that I used is Briar Smoke. Briar Smoke is the color by Varathane. Just something I picked up at one of the big box stores. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and dry fit to make sure that I'm all good there. And it looks like that's going to work perfectly. Okay, and I have my wood glue. I also have a compressor here and a nail gun, and that's how I'm going to put the frames on. So I'm just gonna start with the sides. So I will put a bead of glue right on the edge. You always want to use wood glue. And then I'm just gonna Since I'm on a flat surface here, I'm just gonna put the frame right on the edge. Okay, and then I'm gonna just bring it right to the edge of my table and use my nail gun to put that piece onto the frame. Now I found if I put the nail gun right on, rest the bottom right on the edge of the table, press in, hold, and shoot. And I'm gonna put 2 nails in each side. Now, one thing to keep in mind with a nail gun is you want to keep it straight up and down, because it, as the nail goes in, it can, what do you call it? It can either move left or right. So if you keep it straight up and down, it's going to still stay in the wood. If I were to like go like this, it could pop up on top of my my board where I don't want it to be, or down below on the back side. I've learned that from experience. Yes, I have done that before. Okay, now we're gonna do the other side. And same thing, 2 nails in the side. Okay, and now, let's see, I do have a rag around here somewhere that'll wipe off all that excess glue. Got a little much on that one. It really doesn't take much glue. Beautiful. And the final side, the top. Okay, now I'm just gonna clean up the glue a little bit. And make sure none squeezed out inside. It looks like we're all good there. And there we go. We have a fun little sign to give to someone. And you guys, you know, it isn't perfect. These signs aren't meant to be perfect, but they make perfect gifts for someone.